let's talk about how Sega is bad again. They just keep rolling on these like greatest hits between paywalling and now union busting. This has been a hard fight, and it's devastating to say goodbye to our friends and co-workers. Sega of America layoff will hit organized staff hard. Union worked to lessen the impact. So the union tried to negotiate, right? And use their collective powers to kind of help soften the blow here, but it sounds like Sega is just hell-bent on charging for New Game Plus and getting rid of staff at this point. The upcoming staff layoffs at Sega of America are set to hit its worker union, so they're getting rid of union jobs. In a statement to the game developer, the CWA-backed group said all 61 employees being let go in March 2024 are represented by the union. That is not a good look. Are we surprised? No. I mean, I think the game industry is going to try everything it can to get rid of union people because it hates them with a passion and will conveniently find any way to get rid of people in the union. The union was formed by 144 staffers last April, and they're gonna 61 people let go are all by union too. So they're getting rid of almost half of the union right there. Back in November, the union accused SOA of trying to cut 40% of its staff. I mean, yeah, they did. They succeeded. The act was alleged to be a union-busting tactic. I mean, again, yes, because every game publisher hates unions. And both SOA and Sega have previously been accused of undermine union efforts. So effectively, Sega, who knows? Who knows if I'm okay? It's one of those days. Can't say some words. So Sega is pretty much as bad as Amazon. They're up there with Amazon and Starbucks. Aegis said it heard about impending SOA layoffs months ago and bargained to mitigate the damage. Sega initially aimed to cut nearly all the temp workers and give them 2 weeks severance. Oh, that's so nice of them. It's so nice. 2 weeks. By bargaining with Sega of America, Aegis secured 8 to 14 weeks of severance for all those being let go, depending on their tenure. Those talks also enabled 18 employees to keep their jobs. So they were really trying to just dismantle that union. Without a union, today would have been a lot worse than it is. Yeah, true. So with the union, they saved a couple jobs, but without it, they would have given them 2 weeks of severance instead of the 8 to 14 weeks. Man, Sega's such a great company. Like, don't you want to work for them? Don't you think it's so grand? Such a good guy. Pretty soon, they're gonna like charge you for like saving a game. They're like, oh, that's another $5, man. You can't save. That's a new feature. This has been a hard fight, and it's devastating to say goodbye to all of our friends and co-workers, wrote Aegis. While it was glad to soften the blow of layoffs, it acknowledged the event justified its existence. Yeah, without a union today, it would have been a lot worse, it continued. These are hard times in our industry, and every worker in it deserves a union so we can all fight back together. I agree. To be honest, it's one of the only industries that makes more money than film and television, but somehow barely has unions. And when they do unions, it gets conveniently busted, or they'd, get rid of that whole division that, a lot of times what happens is like QA. QA is usually one of the first to unionize because, frankly, the most abused. And then they're like, oh, you know what? We don't need QA here. Let's get them in Mexico or India. I think that'd be better. But unions also prevented layoffs from hitting represented members across ZeniMax and Activision Blizzard. Yeah, because we were talking about that before, how Activision Blizzard union members did not get touched in the 1900 layoffs. After Microsoft decided to cut 1,900 jobs in January, and while unions can't always protect against layoffs, they can help mitigate the damage. During a recent chat with game developers CWA and ex-Bungie General Counsel Don McGowan advised studios to unionize, and 2024 is shaping up to be a layoff-heavy year. Yeah, and organizing is one way for developers to fight for their rights. I want to show you one thing real fast since we're talking about layoffs. Here's a website, and it talks about and lists every single game company that lays people off, for the most part. Right? There's still like tiny indie ones that probably they're not picking up here. Right now, we're at 5,900 people laid off in January. Last year was 10,500. So we're over half. We're over halfway there in 1 month. This year is gonna be devastating for the game industry. So when you have people like Sega over here actively union busting, I mean, what do you expect? I feel like there's going to be just a very bad time for a lot of game companies because A, they're getting rid of very valuable people. They might just leave the industry. What's the end game here? I don't know. I honestly feel like a lot of these game companies are just going to be exiting US and Europe, at least some places in Europe, right? Mainly the expensive ones. So I think it's becoming too costly for them to operate in the States. specifically the States. It's so expensive now. They hate remote, so they want to be in office. Activision was guilty of this. Bungie was guilty of this. So many of these companies that have laid people off are guilty of this, where they'll relocate somebody and then lay them off like a month or two later. I don't think it's too costly. It's just less profitable. Yeah, but to them, profits is the bottom line. And if they can get good enough, strike gold with a live service game, then they're good. But I think it's I don't know. It's a weird time in our industry where, there's so much air at the top. I mean, if you go to Twitch right now, let's go browse. You have GTA because of RP. You have Fortnite, that's just a behemoth. And now there's games inside of Fortnite. So I think you're going to see a lot of studios making games that sit inside of Fortnite as a engine. You have League, Valorant. I don't even want to click on that one. You have a horror game that'll pop off. I worry for how many people have been let go in this industry that they're just going to leave. And I honestly don't know what they're going to do. This year is not even devastating. It's just going to be apocalyptic. Frankly, it's just going to be apocalyptic for the industry. Because live service, 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 live service. All of the top games are live service. Suicide Squad is there just because it's an atrocity, Live service, don't know what the hell that is. Live service, with all of them making this much money and kind of like taking all of the air at the top of the mountain here. These other game companies are struggling. But yeah, I mean, honestly, what I think is going to happen is just like people are just going to leave the industry. They're going to go into tech. They're going to go into other avenues that they can utilize their skills in. The game industry obviously doesn't give a shit about them. They are a number on a spreadsheet, and the bubbles kind of burst on tech right now. This is also inevitable consequences of COVID's remote work. Oh, definitely. That's on the C level because they hired too much. They did a quick fix, and now they're playing with people's lives. And the reality is too with game industry, like all these game companies hate remote work. They hate it. They hate it. And even Riot, they tried to get people back. Blizzard tried to get people back. And people left because of that. Both Riot and Blizzard are both in California. Very expensive to live in California. The salaries kind of help, but you're not saving a whole bunch unless you're doing an hour plus drive into work every day. And honestly, most people did their best work sitting at home because they didn't have to drive. They didn't have to do a lot of things. It was less stressful. Some people want that interaction. Like I feel as artists, it was good to go in every once in a while because it's really easy to do storyboarding and a lot of stuff when you're there with each other. You can vibe off each other's energies, but you don't need to. I hired too much because everyone was at home and all the time and money was being spent on games. Yep. Yeah, so I think it's a dual thing, right? Where people are making less money right now in the industry and they bloated too hard, but that doesn't excuse Sega here from actively union busting. Like this is a whole separate issue of Sega of America needs to get rid of people, but they specifically targeted people in the union to get rid of. Like of all the companies, like that's pretty freaking scummy. Sega's study shows workers are more productive working less hours in their home than 40 hours on site. Oh yeah, definitely, hands down. I think the issue always with games is security. But I would also argue some companies are really good about remote work, right? They'll pay for the increase in energy because you're home all day now. You no longer can keep it as warm or whatever, depending on what kind of thermostat you have. But a lot of these companies just like expect you to absorb the costs of like, hey, you know what? Like artists have small servers for PCs. Depending on what you do, if you're a 3D modeler, you have a full-fledged server equivalent to raw power. And then if you're a motion graphics guy, you also have multiple PCs that have to handle heavy 3D, and then the companies don't offset that energy cost. So there's like pros and cons too, right? Where no one has really, the good companies have figured out how to do remote work. The ones that are fighting it are the ones that are losing control. And honestly, the way that I have always led my teams is treating them like adults. And when they don't act like adults, then you treat them like children. But you give them the benefit of the doubt at first, instead of just, no, everyone has to come back in because we need an eye on you. Union busting Sega is doing is beyond scummy and its own could heavily damage the company. I think it's just a different mentality, to be honest. Sega is not an American company, so it's definitely a different cultural, like when you have multinational game companies, there's definitely cultures that clash. And in general, if you are not an American company hiring Americans, there's always going to be a clash from a cultural perspective. I wouldn't say like boycott Sega, but I'm not actively like looking to buy their stuff, It's unfortunate because like Persona 3's out, like that one came out. And it's like, oh, that looks really cool. but also fuck Sega. But the sad part is I don't think any of these type of things will ever really impact the bottom line, right? This just affects the people that are working on it. Like, no one's gonna be like, man, Sega, they union busted, I'm not gonna buy their stuff. Because if that's true, then people would have stopped buying Amazon a long time ago. Like, they would have stopped a long time ago. So these things are like nice to talk about. I think it's just it's an internal strike that has to happen in the entertainment industry of saying enough is enough. We're in a weird time. The worker in the company itself are like very much at odds. And I don't really see a resolution other than like, don't be a shitty person. But anyway, guys, that's it for this video. Let me know what you think of Sega. I think they're scumbags, but thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.